The month of April started with a $140 million download celebration, a new login bonus campaign, a new Super 17 Dokkan Fest, and oh boy, like 10,000 awakenings. SR Zangia Dokkan Awakening was actually not bad. She was like a mini version of AGL Kid Buu. She could lower attack on Super, now recover 10% HP at the start of turn, and had a not so bad link set. Like she linked well with the other Hera Clan units, who also all got Dokkan Awakenings, as you'll see. The SR GT17s got Dokkan Awakened and 2 Super 17s. Their SA multiplier went from huge to extreme, their link set became amazing, like they both gained fierce battle and big bad bosses. And they also now had an additional 20% attack in their passive, making them both amazing filler cards on their respective teams. As for the man himself, AGL Super 17. Well, as you know it now, this is without a doubt the best AG Neo Gods leader, like by far, at least post EZA. Like he was the only Neo Gods leader that actually survived the 7th year anniversary power creep. But at the time, he was seen by almost everyone as the worst Neo Gods leader. Well, that's before Broly, but yeah, at the time. And I'll explain to you why. Defense was not as valuable as it is today, and that was kind of this guy's gimmick. He had an unconditional 40% damage reduction at the start of turn, which was pretty much useless, since it's not like you could tank like a finishing blow from Super Saiyan 3 Goku's Dokkan event, for example. And 40% damage reduction without any start of turn defensive buff meant that he tanked pretty much the same as every other Neo Gods leader, while doing like way less damage. Because yes, this guy had to get hit 4 times to still do less damage than every single Neo Gods leader that's released yet. Like, what kind of joke was that, bro? And for whatever weird reason, they also shafted his links. Like, he had shock and speed instead of big bad bosses, which meant that on a villain team, he was worse than his tech and physical counterparts. But that's not the worst thing. He was the extreme AGL Neo Gods leader, and guess what? The only other extreme AGL Dokkan Fest was Rose, so his team almost had no top tier units. Like, out of the top of my head, the third best unit on his team was like what? AGL Golden Frieza, AGL Android 17, maybe AGL Super Vegeta, who didn't even fit under his first leader skill. So like, yeah, you get it, that team was just whack, bro. AGL Android 17 Dokkan Awakening was pretty good though. He greatly lowered defense on Super, which was necessary on Super 17's team, since most of the units there did little to no damage. He gave 2 key and 25% attack and defense to AGL in-type units, and had a decent link set. He was Super 17's second best linking partner at the time, sharing 4 links with him. So yeah, this guy was actually what the team needed. The new banner unit Int Hellfighter 17 could have been decent if he was AGL. Like, I don't really see the point of releasing a banner unit that's supposed to work for the new Dokkan Fest and not make it fit under the new character leader skill, especially when Super 17 was like in need of good characters on his team, and this guy could have helped him tremendously, but like, nah bro, he was Int. Anyways, he had a supreme damage multiplier with a 20% chance of turning on Super, 90% attack and 2 key at the start of turn when facing only one enemy, and a decent link set. I actually shared 6 links with AGL Super 17. Like, bro, this guy worked so well with AGL Super 17 that most people didn't even care, bro. At the time, they just ran him on his team, even though he didn't fit under his leader skill. Like, he had 8 key next to Super 17, 6 from their links and 2 from his passive. So it actually kind of worked, and wasn't even that crazy of a thing to do, especially when the other 17 actually also supported in-type units. So having all the 17s on the same rotation was actually a decent rotation. As for Super 17's banner, it was a phenomenal banner, bro. It brought back AGL Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, who was arguably the second or third best unit in the game, the 2 other 17s who were quite decent as I explained earlier, AGL Rose and AGL Super Vegeta who were still in the top 10, and AGL Super Saiyan 3 Goku, who even though did fell off, was still a decent filler unit, and who, spoiler alert, got his EZA that same year. AGL Super Saiyan 2 Gohan's Dokkan Awakening was also very good. He now raised his attack by 50% on Super for 3 turns, and gave AGL and Strength type units 2 key and 25% attack and defense, making this guy a must on Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta's team for the time being. Like I explained earlier, key was kind of an issue on that team, so any unit that could give key to the rotation was very appreciated. AGL Full Power Bojack Dokkan Awakening was also not bad. He now had a supreme damage multiplier, could greatly lower defense on Super, and his start turn attack buff went from 40 to 90%, so quite a significant jump. The only problem is that his link set was not great, at least not on Super 17's team. Fun fact, but before the official translations, people thought that this guy was going to get an immense damage multiplier, which would have made him insane, but unfortunately it just wasn't the case. Int Android 18 Dokkan Awakening was, well, nothing crazy. Like, she just got a supreme damage multiplier, could now greatly lower defense on Super, and got a 30% star return attack and defensive buff. And honestly, by that time, nukers were pretty much dead. So changing Rainbow Key Spheres to Int was not really an ability that you wanted to have. It could completely ruin your board and make you miss a super attack on a character. Strength Android 17 got a similar upgrade, but instead of a 30% star return attack and defensive buff, he just got a 40% star return attack buff. But since this guy created Rainbow Key Spheres on the board, he was a very good unit that you could bring on your mono strength teams to make things run smoother with the rainbow orb changing. The SR strength Bojack also got a Dokkan Awakening, and yeah, he was not great. He was just a weaker version of his summonable counterpart, and I think one of the only POR in the whole game to have an extreme damage multiplier. And bro, his stats were just so low. Like, this guy just got shafted hard. He got shafted hard, bro. Anyways, they also released the second volume of the Book of War, with I guess a better pool of character this time around. The next week, we got another double rates banner, and you already know what that means. It meant a new LR was unfeatured somewhere in that pool, and that new LR was none other than LR Majin Vegeta. LR Majin Vegeta was insane to say the least. He was exactly the type of unit that the extreme AGL type needed. His leader skill was obviously very good since it wasn't restricted to super or extreme class units, so you could for once run a full AGL team of decent characters, but unlike Gohan, this Vegeta had no key mechanic. All he had was a monstrous 150% attack buff on Super. So what they did is make his 12th key stronger than his 18th key, at least when targeting one enemy. His 12th key had a mega colossal damage multiplier with a 20% chance of stunning the enemy, and his 18th key was an AoE doing colossal damage to all enemies with a 20% chance of stunning each enemy. So this guy was now the best AoE unit in the game, and by far. And thank God he was AGL, because the AGL type had insane key support type units like AGL Rose, so you could actually pull his 18 key in the World Tournament. Like, sure, he wasn't as good as LR Broly, but LR Broly wasn't out yet, so for the time being, he was the best. As for his links, he kind of got shafted unfortunately. He got Shattering the Limit instead of Fierce Battle, and a Royal Lineage instead of the Saiyan Lineage. So he wasn't as versatile as LR Super Saiyan Gohan. The Double Rates banner also came with two other Dokkan Awakenings. Physical Super Saiyan Vegeta was actually still complete garbage. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. Like, the debuff was good for the time being since bosses could still be debuffed, but you had to attack the enemy first. And a lot of people at the time were under the impression that if you managed to proc an additional attack from the hidden potential system, that the enemy's attack would be lowered twice, so an 80% attack buff, which would have been crazy, but it wasn't the case. He was also unfortunately LR Majin Vegeta best linking partner, sharing 4 links with him. So yeah, another Majin Vegeta shaft regarding his links. Physical Great Saiyaman was not bad. He had a decent leak set, raised his attack by 50% for 3 turns on Super, and had an unconditional 90% star return attack buff. There's not much to say here, he was just an all-around decent card. Almost a week later, and it was already time for the second part of the 140 million download celebration, teasing the Dokkan Fest, which looked like it was going to be a new Buu unit. The next day, we got the new Neogods leader, and a bunch of new Dokkan Awakenings. Strength Kid Buu got quite the upgrade. He went from a huge supreme damage multiplier, like he completely skipped extreme, which was unusual at the time, and he had a 70% star return attack and defensive buff, while disabling the enemy's guard, something that was quite powerful at the time, where the meta was centered around monotype teams. If it weren't for his links, this guy would have probably been a staple on almost every strength teams. But yeah, nonetheless, he was still decent. Tech Super Buu on the other hand didn't get much, but enough for him to be a decent option on the future Extreme Tech team. Well, that's what people thought at the time. If only they knew how bad the Extreme Tech Neogods leader was going to be, bro. Anyways, he went from having an extreme damage multiplier to a supreme damage multiplier, and his healing went from 25 to 30% of the damage he dealt. So yeah, this guy could single-handedly heal you back to full HP mid-turn. His link still sucked though. Int Kid Buu, the extreme Int Neo Gods leader. Was quite good. The Int type was filled with tanks and sustainability. He recovered 12% HP on super, so even more healing to that team, and had a 100% start of turn attack buff, plus an additional 70% attack when above 30% HP. So as long as you could keep super in with this guy, he had a 170% start of turn attack buff. Like, that was just insane. But then you take a look at his links. He had no key links. Literally none. This guy had no key links. Zero. Nada. Like, bro. What the hell were they thinking? Like, I get it. He would have been too strong with multiple key links, but they could have at least given him one. Like, at least one. Like, zero is crazy to me, but nonetheless, if you did manage to super with him, this guy was insane next to Buhan. They shared 4 links together, all of them obviously being offensive links. So yeah, this guy did a lot of damage. But the other problem is that both of the Boos needed orbs. Kid Buu for the key and Buhan since he was a nuker. So yeah, Kid Buu was, in my opinion, very poorly designed. Strong, but poorly designed. And Vegeta got his redemption. If you remember, this guy got shafted hard on release, but now he was actually quite good. He was a nuker gaining 20% attack per Int-type key spheres obtained, had a supreme damage multiplier, and greatly raised attack on super for 3 turns. So yeah, this guy was good. We just had to wait and see who the Int-type Neo Gods leader was going to be. Strength Goku was just Int Vegeta's counterpart, but instead of raising his attack on super by 50% for 3 turns, he raised the attack of all allies by 20% for 1 turn. So he was also very good, and a decent option on Super Saiyan 4 Goku's team. Like, sure, his link set didn't quite fit on that team, but he had prepared for battle, which was enough to at least link with Super Saiyan 4 Goku. As for Kid Buu's banner, it was actually pretty good. It featured the 2 nukers, who were, as I explained earlier, quite decent. Tech Golden Frieza and Injanemba, who were still phenomenal tanks, Physical Kid Buu, who was still quite useful thanks to his support, and Int Buhan, who was still a beast. 4 days later, we got another World Tournament, the 18 World Tournament, and we were back to the old reward format. So what happened during the anniversary was a one-time thing. The World Tournament reward card, Strength Vegeta, was actually quite bad. Like, sure, he had a supreme damage multiplier, greatly lower defense on super, and had a decent link set, but that passive skill condition was just horrible. 80% attack and defense when below 80% HP, like, this meant that this guy pretty much had no passive at the start of turn, and that you had to get out of your way to take damage if you wanted him to have a passive as fast as possible. Like, this just wasn't worth it, especially considering the fact that you had so many better options on any mono strength team. I'm pretty sure this was the strongest type at the time. Once the World Tournament was over, they actually teased the next Dokkan Fest, and wait, they actually teased 2 new units, meaning the month was going to end with a dual Dokkan Fest featuring a new Gogeta and a new Janemba. I can only imagine how hyped that was, because okay, yeah, now we're used to that, but at the time, if we take a look at the previous years, they didn't really do anything that crazy for Golden Week. Like, all they did the last year was release a special banner bringing back Strength Gogeta, which was very high for the time, obviously, but now it looked like they were going to release a brand new Gogeta. Like, that was just another level of hype. And if you don't believe me, Dokkan actually got top grossing just from the teasers alone. Like, bro, all they did was drop teasers, and they instantly got top grossing the same day. They just dropped teasers, top grossing, like that, bro. Like, bro, tell me when was the last time that something like that happened? Like, just tell me, bro. Because I can't remember. The next day, they brought back the Arale celebration, like the banner, the Dokkan event, the story event, pretty much everything that came with that celebration last year. And at the same time, gave some Dokkan Awakens to the free-to-play Arale and Kid Goku. They now both led their respective type for 77% HP, which actually made them quite good for Prime Battle events. They also got extreme damage multipliers and a bunch of ki and attack as their passives. Arale gained 4k and 4000 attack when above 30% HP, while Kid Goku got 2k and 6000 attack as the first attacker in the turn. So yeah, not bad for free-to-play units, but like nothing crazy. 4 days later, and it was already time for the $150 million celebration. They gave everyone the second Gold Stone ever, which still had a very decent pool of characters, with Int Ultimate Gohan Gohan probably being the best one here. Thanks to the buff he got in the update 3.3.0, they have the stamina cost of the Prime Battle events if you still didn't farm them, opened up all the past Dokkan events, but most importantly, it was time for the first ever Golden Week Dual Dokkan Fest, which was, like I explained earlier, extremely hype. In Super Gogeta, the Super Int Neo Gods leader was, as you probably guessed it, phenomenal. He had an immense damage multiplier while lowering the enemy attack and defense on Super, an ability that was still very useful, a 120% star return attack buff, and just like Strength Gogeta, he was super effective against all types, which was now more useful than ever, because unlike his Strength counterpart, this guy's team cannot have characters of multiple types, so being effective against all types was a huge deal on a monotype team. This alone probably made Gogeta's team the best in the game, and that's not even taking into account the fact that this guy had the uncontested best unit in the game, LR Super Saiyan Gohan. But even if you didn't, Gogeta's link set was very good, so you could put pretty much any Saiyan character on his team and it would work. Funnily enough though, some people thought at the time that Strength Gogeta was stronger because of his higher stats due to his S tier potential system, but that was obviously not the case. I actually made calculations for you guys and rainbowed with none of their links active under Neo Gods leaders. In Super Gogeta had almost double the APT of his Strength counterpart. So yeah, this wasn't even close, bro. Not even close. Strength Janemba, the extreme strength Neo Gods leader, was also insane. Some would even argue at the time that he was better than Gogeta. He was pretty much Gogeta's reverse. Instead of being effective against all types, he had guard, but this time around he also had dodge. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this was the first unit ever to have built-in dodge chance in their passive. And as you already know today, dodge is just such a broken ability. So couple that with guard and you had the best tank in the game here. Well, at least below 50% HP, because yeah, Golden Frieza was still the GOAT. But unlike Frieza, this guy also did damage. He had 80% attack built in his passive, which coupled with the fact that this guy greatly lowered defense on Super, made him a surprisingly not so bad offensive unit, especially for a tank. And bro, his team was just perfect. The Strength type had all the attack debuffers, like Strength Omega, Mega Rildo, or even Prime Battle LR Frieza. So you can already see where I'm going with this. You just couldn't take damage on his team, and it actually made some old units shine, like Strength Cell because he needed time to stack, time that he could actually get on Janemba's team. And that's not even mentioning Janemba's link set, which was phenomenal at the time. Like, he had all the good villain links, Brutal Beatdown, Fear and Fate, Big Bad Bosses, Shocking Speed, all the links that he shared with Strength Omega, by the way. So this only made him better with time, as you'll see. Strength Janemba also came with a new SR Janemba that could be awakened into an AGL Super Janemba, and even though not even close to being as good as his Strength counterpart, was not bad. He was a Rainbow Orb Changer that lowered defense on Super, and that shared Strength Janemba's amazing link set. So he was genuinely a unit that could run on Super 17's team, but most people at the time just used him as AC fodder for the other Dokkan Fest Janembas. Tech Pike Yuhan's Dokkan Awaken was, well, okay I guess. He now had a supreme damage multiplier and slightly higher start return flat stat buffs, but even though he could greatly lower attack on Super, his stats were just too low for the time, and that's not even counting the fact that this guy had a 12 key multiplier of 130%. Like, he was usable, just nothing amazing. As for their banners, well, I'm just going to start off by saying that these guys got top grossing again the day the banners dropped, like just insanity. But I'm not surprised, their banners were just insane. They both had your typical 3 multis get 1 free discount, but for 150 hours this time around, which was 22 hours more than the last time that discount was available, and boy were the featured units insane. And Gogeta's banner brought back strength percent for Goku, who was seen by many players at the time as the best unit in the game, well, at least before Gogeta and Janemba came around. Tech Angels percent Goku, who was still very good, and Blue Vegeta and in Sword of Hope Trunks, who were pretty much must-runs on Gogeta's team, Physical Vegito Blue, who was still in the top 10, and Tech Beerus, who was not as good anymore but still a Dokkan Fest character nonetheless. Strength Janemba's banner brought back the Mask Saiyan, who was still a decent card, Physical Final Form Cooler, who was before the dual Dokkan Fest definitely a top 3 unit in the game, Tech Merge Zamasu and Physical Goku Black, who were still decent units, and Strength Cell and Strength Omega, who were both now better than ever on the Janemba's new leader skill.